Hello and welcome to another video tutorial Monday. This week I will be showing you how to use these steel ruled dies from Papertrey Ink. They're the beautiful Blossoms die collection number 1, and I wanted to show you how to use these because I get a lot of questions about how to use these kind of dies. So I'm starting out with my card base. This is vintage cream cardstock from Papertrey Ink, and I'm just folding it into a standard size card. And I will also be showing you how to use the negative as well as the positive die cut image in this card. So I thought I'd kind of give you a little bit of a different perspective. So first, since I'm going to be punching out a flower from my card base as part of my design, I'm going to get the card front ready before that. So I'm going to cut down my cardstock. This is from the October Afternoon, their newest collection, which is Modern Homemaker. And I'm just cutting this down to a 1/2 inch smaller than my actual card base. So for 3.75 by 5 inches. So now that I have that done, I decided that I wanted some rounded corners on my card. And in order to make them look like they're supposed to be that way, you need to actually stagger your corners, or not stagger, kind of make the inner one smaller and the larger one bigger. Just kind of how you would make circles, the inner one smaller and the larger one bigger. So I used the 1/4 inch on my pattern paper and the 1/2 inch side of my corner chomper on my card base. And so now, as you can see here, that looks perfect together. It looks like the base is just an outline of the pattern paper. So I'm going to be using some tea dye ink, which this is a pretty new brown to me. I have been using vintage photo and antique linen for a while, but I really like this tea dye color. So I just went around the outsides of the card base and the pattern paper, and I'm going to stick them down with my ATG. And the thing to remember with this card is, since you inked the base, you should ink everything else with tea dye ink. That way everything looks like it's supposed to be there. It's only a little bit extra step with adhering the flowers and the sentiment, so it's worth it to just take that extra step and ink them with tea dye. So I'm putting my largest flower on my card, and since I found the place that I want to put it on my card and have it die cut there, I'm just going to tape it down with some really low tack tape. This is some washi tape from Pretty Tape on Etsy, and it just holds it in place but won't damage my paper when I remove it. And it won't show up at all when you die cut it, it just holds the die in place. And notice how I'm placing it face down on my Sizzix cutting platform with all the tabs down, and I'm just going to sandwich it in between the 2 clear plates. And it really varies on what people say about putting the die face up or face down, but you know what, it really just doesn't matter. So I always put it face down just so I can see what's cutting and make sure that it went through all the way, I guess. So I am taking off the tape here, and as you can see, it's cut through my card no problem, even though it's super thick cardstock and pattern paper. I just simply punch out the wafer thin die, or the die cut. And the cool part about these dies is it's just like a little ridge around the outside. It's not sharp, you can't hurt yourself on them, but it cuts like magic, and it even works on things like felt and fabric, and I'd love to try it on some felt sometime soon. So now I'm going to be punching the medium and small blossoms using some vintage cream cardstock and some pure poppy cardstock. And I'm just going to run those through at the same time because it saves time. So I just line them up on there and then run it through really quickly. And I'm actually just going to run it backwards back through it because I had stuff that I didn't want the plates to run into on the other side. So really, I mean, you can roll through it either way. You can roll through it twice if you really want to. As long as the dies don't move around, it'll still be fine. So I'm just putting my platform back in my Sizzix, which is how I store it. And I actually just store it under my bed because it's kind of big and it's nice to just have it on the floor and away from my feet because I run into things a lot. So as you can see, the blossoms fall right out of the dies just by, tapping them a little bit. And I'm just looking to see how they line up right now. And I'm going to be adhering those to the inside of the card so that when you open it, the sentiment is still there. But first I'm going to ink around the inside edges of the flower. And I just went around with my inking tool, just using the ink that was already on it, because there's enough residue that really keeps it still looking pretty vintagey. So I'm taking this Sophie Sentiment stamp set, which you know is my favorite sentiment stamp set ever from Lawn Fawn. And then I'm just lining it up on my craft table and picked it up with clear block. These two words are love and you. And it's nice that you have them separate, but you need to line them up first. So what I do is I test stamp it, where I line them up like this, and it's not looking quite right to me. So I stamp off the excess ink and move the U a little bit closer to the love. And just by kind of tweaking it like that, you can get a sentiment that you're really happy with. And so I stamp it there, and I think that looks good. So I'm just going to stamp it straight on my flower. Actually, after I put it in on the card and kind of line it up, make sure that when I stamp my sentiment, it'll end up being straight on the card, since the petals need to line up when I put it on the card. So I went ahead and stamped it, and this is the brown ink, brown sugar from Jenny Bolden Studios. I absolutely adore this dye ink. It is so fantastic and leaves the most amazing impression every time. It's amazing. It's my absolute favorite dye ink. So I have adhered the Pure Poppy medium flower with some dimensional adhesive, and I'm just curling the edges of my sentiment and sticking it on. I just used my ATG and stuck it on with that. So that's my kind of finished flower part of the card. Now what I'm wanting to do is just stitch in a circle around the outside of it. So I just used my circle nestabilities as circle guides, and I actually used the one that fit perfectly around it first, and then used the next step bigger, just so I would have it perfectly centered. And that's my little trick for getting good circles, because I just love those dies. They're so versatile. And now I'm just going through with my Tonic Craft Pick, which this is great. It's put out by Tim Holtz, and it's retractable, so I don't hurt myself. And I just eyeballed it and went around the outside edge. And now, actually, before I stitch, I'm going to go back in and erase, because it's impossible to go back and erase when you have thread in it. But, something you wouldn't necessarily think about before you did it. So, right now, I'm just taking my embossing, or my thread, my embroidery thread, and I'm just making sure I have enough to kind of go around the circle a couple times, because I will be stitching around the circle and then back through to make sure it's a solid line of stitching. Just going to thread my needle and then start stitching. Here I start on the back, of course, unless I want to have a bow on the front, but on this one I want to have it on the back. And I'm just going to I was going to use the purple, but I thought that maybe if I didn't go all the way back around the circle, if I decide not to, then this tape could still stay there because it's still pretty and blends in. This is just some more washi tape from the Pretty Tape store on Etsy. It's my very favorite. So I just taped on that end so I don't have to worry about it coming off the card. And I'm just stitching up and down through the holes. And usually I just do this when I'm like watching TV or something like that. Really simple, easy to do, and it adds so much of a handmade quality to your work. I love it. And so I'm just finishing up the stitching. I came back around the circle. And it just adds that perfect touch to the card, that really tactile texture feeling. So I'm just going to tie it in a bow. I'm going to take off the masking tape and then just tie it into a quick little knot on the back to keep it in place, and it looks nice and clean that way. And so there I have my card, and what I'm actually going to do is use a chocolate chip marker from Stampin' Up! And draw some stitching lines around the outside in brown, because I thought that would be a good finishing touch to help define the edge. And there's our finished card. So I hope you enjoyed learning about wafer thin dies this week. Catch you again next week for another video tutorial Monday. Thank you!